Hey everyone, welcome to episode 113. I'm your host Stelios and the founder and director of Ceres Pure Food Innovation. Just another little update. It's the same as the last one really, but we really want to reiterate this. So, as we get closer to Christmas, we have noticed an increase in sales. Everything is taking longer for us to source and make, and sometimes it's hard to source too. This should settle out in the new year. You may notice some different packaging, and and that's mostly because it's been increasingly difficult to source the same packaging that we've always used. But our main goal was making sure that we kept the consistency of the products, bang on really. And so whatever is inside the product, inside the packaging is the same. It's just the outside that may be slightly different. So if you have got any concerns about receiving the same product in different packaging, just email me or call me. You can always get us on info@worldofceres.com. If you want to email me personally, it's stelios@worldofceres.com. As you may have noticed, we've started adding some little adverts at the beginning of the podcast. We'll never insert adverts in the middle to break the conversation, so we hope this is cool. So last year we developed and launched the Ceres Deep Fry Cleaner. For us, there was a huge gap in the market here because, frying ranges especially, they don't really get boiled out as much as they used to, and nobody really wants to use dangerous chemicals that make you feel really crap for a while and burn your skin. So that's totally understandable. So we wanted to sort of bring something out that was a lot cleaner. So the benefits of regular boil outs are endless, but the fact is this, that cleaner pans will give you better oil life, better food quality, better pan stroke range recovery. But one of the biggest positives is the fact that you're also checking your pans for their integrity. Are you looking for any failures? And if you're not cleaning your pans, well, you're not getting close enough. So with luck, you can find out if there's any issues beforehand. But it's also a known fact that if you're having regular boil outs, if you're doing it regularly, your frying range, your pans will last longer. You've invested a lot of money. You may as well get the most out of it. It works on all frying ranges. It works on all commercial fryers. Think of it like this. If a vessel is dirty, then how can you, have cleanly fried tasting food? It's just not going to happen. Go one step further. How can you have good oil management if you're adding new oil to a dirty fryer? Can you afford not to have a regular boil out routine? The more you do it, the easier it gets. Why wait every 2 years when it takes 4 hours when you can do it once a quarter and it takes 45 minutes? I know which one I'd rather do. So order your deep fry cleaner today at worldofceres.com/shop. Today's episode is with Wilfred Emmanuel-Jones from The Black Farmer. Wilfred was born in Jamaica and raised in Birmingham. Unqualified but persistent, he talked his way into television, where he became a producer-director. He was responsible for introducing chefs like James Martin, Antony Worrall-Thompson, Brian Turner and Gordon Ramsay to the small screen. But now he is simply known as The Black Farmer. After a stint in TV, Wilfred fulfilled his ambition to own a small farm in Devon. This in turn led him to launch a range of sausages and sauces under the Black Farmer label. He had spotted that while many farmers had lost contact with the customer, he could engage directly with them and even persuade them to lobby supermarkets on his behalf. Wilfred's brand now extends to country clothing, Flavours without frontiers, the strapline of all his products. It sums up Wilfred's personality and philosophy, and he refuses to be confined by race, convention or tradition. His forthright opinions on rural affairs and what he sees as justice for small producers often arouse media attention. Wilfred has won entrepreneur awards in his presentation. He argues that everyone must take personal responsibility for their actions, no matter how disadvantaged. The alternative is to slide into a culture of victimhood. As part of his own commitment to broaden horizons, he has launched a scholarship to give young people from inner city communities an opportunity to experience life in the rural environment. I really enjoyed chatting to Wilfred, so I hope you enjoy listening to it. Wilfred, welcome to the podcast, mate.
Well, it's really good to be on your podcast. Thank you very much for inviting me.
You're a busy man. You're very.
I
busy.
am. I'll tell you what. You've done really well to get hold of me, but I wanted to try and make room for you because I think what you're doing is quite interesting.
Well, we try. It's it's nothing amazing. I'm just trying to talk to people that are a lot cleverer than me, which isn't hard. So,
well, I'm sure you are our equal. Let's put it that way.
So, your career and life seems really diverse. Born in Jamaica, you've been a chef, worked in marketing, producer on TV. Now run your own company, which is a huge company, which includes farming, food, and an alcohol range too. Where do you find the time, the inspiration? What gave you the drive to do all of this?
Well, I think my story is the classic working class boy. You know, the boy from the gutter done well. And just to give your listeners a bit of background, I was actually born in Jamaica. And in fact, I'm of the Windrush generation. I didn't arrive on the Windrush, but I arrived at that time. And I suppose everybody knows the story. People like my parents had an opportunity to come to this country. And that was an opportunity to not only better their lives, but also better the lives of their children. And one of the things I always like to remind people of is this. It's a very, very entrepreneurial thing to do. Leave your country of birth, leave your country where you have your family and friends to go, thousands of miles to the side of the world, to a totally foreign land in order to improve your lot. And so all too often, those of us who have parents who originally would have been seen as immigrants or migrants, we have to be bow down and celebrate the fact that they had the courage to leave, because for everyone that left, most people didn't. They stayed behind. And in my case, my parents moved to Birmingham. And we lived in an area called Small Heath in Birmingham. And that was one of those classic inner city areas. It was full of immigrants. I can remember where we lived. There were Indians on one side, Irish on the other side. We were on the middle. It was a real mixture of people from different countries. And it wasn't all nice. We didn't all like each other. In fact, we all hate each other's guts, basically. It's quite classic. We're all in the same boat, having to deal with the hostility of the host nation. So rather than find some sort of camaraderie in that, we spent most of the time sort of trying to better ourselves from our sort of neighbours. Now, I'm from a family of 11, and even back then, that was a large number. And I want you to imagine 11 people brought up in a 2-up, 2-down terrace house, and we were very, very, very poor. And in my case, my father came over to this country first, then my mother followed. My sister and I was left to be brought up by relatives, and then we joined our parents much later. So I could remember as a 4-year-old boy arriving in this country in the middle of winter, never seeing snow, freezing my arse off, and in a place like Birmingham, which was an urban jungle, it was a massive shock to the system. And I think it took me a long time to be able to settle that sort of massive contrast, not only coming to a foreign place, but, taking into consideration these two people that were my parents. I didn't know. As far as I was concerned, they were goddamn strangers. So you can imagine that must have been quite a difficult time in terms of trying to adjust. Now, when we were brought up in Birmingham and being very, very, very poor, I can remember going to the local market with my mother. I was a donkey, basically. She would go and do all this sort of bargaining, buying stuff, and then I'd be the one that would have to then carry it home. And I can remember her buying things like chicken, and it's not like those lovely chickens you now get at the supermarkets, but they were the old hens that basically you had to cook for years to try and get any tenderness out of them. But because they were the cheapest meat, that's the sort of stuff that she would buy. And I can remember her trying to feed 11 people with one chicken. And so, you need to know what you're doing when it comes to that, to try and bring some sort of flavor and taste to it. And even to this day, I have a bone fetish because, we were so bloody hungry. I wanted to get every bit of nutrition out of this sort of bone. And because we were so poor, my father had an allotment. And this allotment really became my oasis away from the misery that I was living in. And, I have absolutely no fond memories at all about Small Heath. It was a pit. It was a shithole. I mean, I haven't been back for goddamn decades, but even now I could still feel the horror of living in that sort of environment. There's nothing worse, more damaging to the human spirit than to be in a place of no hope, or to feel that actually that's where you are, you're trapped and you can't go any further. And so luckily, this allotment really became my oasis from that sort of misery. And this is the vital part of my story. And when I go around the country or even internationally telling people this story, I say, this is the most important thing that people need to take on board, is that I can remember that as an 11-year-old boy, I was 11 at the time, I enjoyed being in this environment so much that I made myself a promise that one day I would have my own farm. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but it was a promise that I sort of lodged into the back of my mind. And then every single thing that I did with my life was to try and get into the position to buy this farm. Now, one of the things I strongly believe in is this. There's some great things about being British. I love being British, but there's some mega disadvantages. One of those big disadvantages is that the British don't like audaciousness. Absolutely can't bear audaciousness. The Americans celebrate that. They love it. Anybody who believes and thinks that they could go from the gutter to becoming the president is a big thing that permeates throughout the country. In the UK, people want to try and bring you down. They want to try and get you to stay in your sort of station. So in order to achieve that, it's strong. It's bad enough trying to do that on your own, but you've got all these forces that are against you to try and keep you in your place. And that's very, very much still present in our society. Anybody who has the audacity to believe they could be they could do better, part of our culture is to bring them down. That ain't good, and that's not going to help to encourage entrepreneurialism. So the most important thing, and it may seem easy, but being British, it's really difficult. You have to have the courage to dream, and you have to have the courage to be audacious. And the moment you become audacious, you are on your own, because most people are going to try and actually undermine you. So you have to have the audacity and the courage to dream.
Yeah.
So, I went to the sort of local secondary modern schools, as they were called then. And this school was as much as the pits as the place that I was living in. The teachers hated being there. The kids hated being there. They didn't really educate us. They policed us. They didn't really have much sort of hope for us. And in truth, a lot of the people I went to school with ended up in prison, ended up in society's dustbin heap. And so therefore, there wasn't really much encouragement, and there weren't any real role models at all for us to sort of aspire to. And so I wanted to get away from home, because you can imagine in a terraced house, 3 to a bed, it was an absolute nightmare. And one of the other disadvantages that I have, is that I'm dyslexic. And in those days, people had absolutely no understanding what dyslexia was. And so my sort of dyslexia is that, it's really difficult to read, and some sort of word blindness. And sometimes you ask them things so ridiculous, people think you're taking a piss. They can't believe that somebody just doesn't understand and they don't know. And so one of the things I'm very passionate about is how to be supportive of dyslexia. And it's only now in older age that I sort of recognize that dyslexia is a gift. And part of my success is down to dyslexia, because the training that I subconsciously gave myself when I was growing up was to always think outside the box, to always think around problems and solutions. So the greatest gift anybody could have is the gift of being dyslexic, because you're automatically trained to think differently all of those people who go on and get fantastic qualifications is basically, they're like human computers. They just know how to logically get information, gather information, and the skills that they had or they have were fundamental for the age that we lived in.
Yeah.
The sort of information age. You want people to be able to gather information, assess information, and then put it out there. And what you need for that is rational thinking, logic, and everything about being entrepreneurial is totally against that.
Yeah.
You don't do what makes sense. You don't do what's logical. You don't do the things that actually normal people have in order to live their lives. And again, having that gift is essential to be able to be entrepreneurial.
I guess being self-employed to some degree is relying on your own intuition as well. And also you remove a lot of those safety blankets that society provides for you if you are working for someone else, if that makes sense.
You're very, very right. So I think that anybody who works for themselves are very, very courageous people, because actually you don't have all the anchors of support that PAYE people have. But you see, PAYE people think that they have certainty. The one thing that self-employed people, freelancers know is that there is no such thing as certainty. And what they're very good at is making a friend of uncertainty. And this is really, really important for people who are trapped in PAYE jobs, who think actually that's the only thing they could have, is to understand that life is uncertain. And that if you make a friend of uncertainty, you're simply saying, I do not know the answers. I do not know the way forward. But I do know I have enough belief in myself that I will be able to overcome what is presented to me. You don't need to have everything lined up. You don't need to join the dots up looking forward. It's the biggest mistake people make in life. You can only join the dots up looking backwards.
Yeah.
You have to have faith that you have what it takes to find any challenge you come across, and you'll find a way. Any person running their own business, any freelancers will have been through that sort of experience of what I call your midnight hour. You don't know what the fuck is coming on next. You just don't know. But you know that tomorrow morning when you wake up, you'll do your best to try and come up with a solution.
Just going back to what you said about how in Britain they don't really celebrate success like they would in the States. And this is something that's been mentioned a lot of times on the podcast. And what do you think that sort of comes down to? Is it just sort of stay in your lane mentality? Like, don't, or is it something more deep rooted? My family's from Cyprus. I'm a second generation immigrant essentially. But Cyprus is very similar to, they don't like people being successful. And I wonder if it's a very similar thing, and obviously Cyprus was controlled by the British for a long time. So I wonder if that mentality comes from the top.
Well, it is. I mean, part of the reason why we're like that in Europe and especially in the UK is because of our history. And the history, it's about the class system.
Yeah. And
so therefore, a name, a family gives you a certain privilege. Unless you have that name, it doesn't make any difference what you do. You'll never have that ultimate sort of privilege. Whereas countries like Australia and America, where it was immigrants actually escaping that sort of regime about you got to be held down to go and to be free, you're going to understand why those countries have got this culture of actually, doesn't matter where you are, whilst you're prepared to work hard, you can achieve what you want. So that is what holds us down. So Europe, because of its history, because of large families, because of the class system that then tiered people, it still actually is in existence today.
Yeah.
And so anybody who manages to break out of that from the UK or any European country have done phenomenally well, because you're having to fight, hundreds of years of history.
Yeah.
So the very class system is the thing that makes it difficult to be entrepreneurial.
And the same thing feeds into sort of the stigma behind bankruptcy or business insolvency. It's like, we told you so, shouldn't have bothered. And I think, whereas in America, I guess it's just like, I guess maybe there is still some stigma there, but it is more supportive. Don't worry, get back on your feet, go do it again. And it's almost, they do relish the enterprise, whereas over here it's just like, yeah, you see, should have just carried on doing what we told you.
Exactly. So most people want to stand still. Most people hate anybody who's going to step out of the prison to think that there's a better world. Now, whatever they may say, what they are desperate for is for you to fail. Because you failing will prove that they were right in standing still. So I've written a book, which some of your listeners may want to read, and it's called Jeopardy, The Danger of Playing It Safe. So the first thing about following your dream is to have the courage to step out of belonging. Because I have a theory that you have a choice in life. You have to decide whether to be or to belong. Now, to belong, there are rules of belonging, how you behave, what you say, what you do, what's expected of you. To be means that actually you're going to accept the people who choose to belong. And a simple example of that would be, let's say somebody's gay and they know that their parents really, really object to that sort of stuff. And that person will have a choice. They have to decide whether they want to belong and therefore hide who they are, or to be and risk upsetting people, risk being sort of pushed away. And anybody taking a step forward to do their own thing has to be prepared to be pushed away and not to be supported. And you're on your own. And you're on your own, and what you then need to do is to go and seek out new tribe members, people who will form your new tribe. The moment you're successful, all those people, all those doubters will be there to come and support you. But for a long time, they're waiting for you to fail, because then that justifies the reason for their existence, which is standing still.
Yeah, it's interesting. It goes back to when I first started my company, and a lot of people just were like, oh, when you're done with it, let us know. They always treated it like a hobby. Oh, you'll be back when you're done. And yeah, it was just weird. I think, but that makes people push forward. I think,
Well, certain sort of people. So what I'm always interested in is this. What you do, what I do, any even a taxi driver, it ain't easy, because all you have is your own discipline, is your own will. And most people want or need to be told what to do. They don't have what it takes to have faith in self. That's what it comes down to. And the thing about having faith is that you don't know whether it's working or not. When you become very successful, all the evidence is there. But when you're starting, there's no evidence at all that it's working. All you have is your own will, your own belief, your own faith. And, that is hard. That's really, really hard.
So how do you separate that from... So, all right, that's a real good point. So in business, how do you separate that from when people say to you that may know better, genuinely, look, you're on the wrong track here. And actually, if you were or not, how do you be honest with yourself and actually say, yeah, I might be on the wrong track here, rather than blindly following your own passion of going forward?
So failure is a really essential part of succeeding. You may be on the wrong track, but that doesn't mean that you're not eventually going to succeed at what you're doing. So to give you an example of that, when I started the Black Farmer brand, we started off doing sauces. We weren't doing sausages.
Okay.
We thought actually the right thing to do was to go into sauces, put a lot of money, put a lot of effort in, but actually it was failing. Now, what is also essential is to fail fast. Sometimes people get so fixed on an idea, they do not have the capacity to bend, to pivot. And that is also essential, because it's not about the idea. It ain't about the product. It's about what you stand for. So you would have obviously heard Simon Sinek talking about the why. It doesn't really matter what you sell. It's the why that people are buying. And therefore, there'll be a lot of wrong turns. There'll be a lot of cul-de-sacs. But if you've got the right mindset, you've got the right why, you will succeed. So I say to people, people say, oh yeah, the Black Farmer brand's successful. We do fantastic sausages. People don't buy into Black Farmer because of our sausages, because there's sausages out there that be much cheaper. There's probably sausages there even better. So you ask yourself, so why are they buying into this brand? And that is because it's what it stands for. So great brands like Virgin. Why has Virgin been able to go and put its name to so many different things? Because there was a time when the Virgin brand meant something, that you felt that if you associated with that brand, it said something about you. And that is the skill. It's not about coming up with a fantastic product or coming up with a cheaper product. Somebody will always come up with something cheaper. Somebody will always come up with something better. The greatest thing to do in creating a business is that why. Why is it that people are buying into us? And most companies do not know what their why is. And I'm a great believer that is where a lot more time and energy needs to be spent. Because that why isn't anything about practical. It isn't tangible. It's a belief system. It's a way of behaving. That is why somebody will come and shop with you rather than not shop with anyone else. So if you think about it, we started an online shop back in October. This is a direct to consumer. And, people have to go out of their way to go online, to put an order in, to wait 3 days for a delivery. And that is a real trust. When they could go around to the local supermarket, go around to the butchers and get it instantly. So the people who are doing that, they're not doing it because we do fantastic food, which we do. There are other factors at play here. And that's the thing to try and understand with every business that you do, about why is it these people are actually doing business with us. And that is where I think a lot more people need to spend a lot more time in thinking. Because if they do that, then they could actually be going in the right direction. And the other thing about being flexible is this. Most of the things that I decided were the right thing to do didn't work. They didn't fail. They failed. And it's only because I'm of the view, just put it out there and seeing what happens, seeing what lands. And the things that land are very different to what I imagined would land. So that is also really, really important. Don't think you know all the answers.
I guess that's, again, building your intuition, isn't it?
Yeah.
What you think is going to work, you look at all the data sets, you talk to all the marketing people, and actually that flops. And something else on the sideline that didn't really, you didn't give as much effort to, ends up picking up steam.
Well, let me tell you a story here. This is the time for a story. When I decided to create the Black Farmer brand, I decided I was going to do sausages, and only because I saw a gap in the market. And I was scratching my head thinking, what the hell am I going to call this brand? And suddenly it came to me, all my next door neighbors used to call me the Black Farmer.
Okay.
And I thought, right, you know what? I'm going to call this the Black Farmer. But even I was slightly a bit wary about doing that. Actually, it may cause a problem. So I went and I commissioned a hell of a lot of research. And all the research came back and says, do not call it the Black Farmer because it will offend and it will upset people. Now, there's a big lesson here. And the lesson is this. Research will tell you what people were thinking yesterday. Research will tell you what people are thinking today. But research will not tell you what people are thinking tomorrow. That is where you need to have faith. That's where you need to have belief in yourself and step forward and believe that actually people will eventually follow. So we live in a society where everything is data driven. That unless the data says do this, unless the research says this, they don't do it. That's why you don't get much innovation. That's why actually these companies start to sort of go backwards, because actually they're too dependent on what is now rather than what is the future. That is why it's entrepreneurs who actually create the future, because they're not driven by data. They're driven by a passion, by an idea. And that is all you need, really. And for companies to see that is really, really important. I believe that every company should have what I call a creative department of weirdos, of people who are seriously left of center, that will actually, are the future thinkers, the ones who are really thinking about what may be possible.
Did you ever get any blowback on the name though? Like, did anyone, I don't know, anybody else that that's black, let's say, did they say, "Oh, I don't like the name," or was it?
Oh yeah, lots of people do. I got lots of blowback. So I got reported to, at the time it was called the Commission of Racial Equality, about people saying, oh, I shouldn't say that. Some people today will say, oh God, if I was white, I wouldn't be able to say that. But any great brand has to have an edge to it. People are going to go, whoa, it's a bit like, I can remember when Richard Branson launched the Virgin brand. It was like, whoa, saying the word virgin in public was not the thing to do. And, what I say to people is, well, I can call it the Afro-Caribbean farmer, but it doesn't have the same sort of punch or ring to it. It sounds very woke. It sounds very sort of politically correct. A lot of black-owned businesses have felt that they've had to hide their black identity in order to do business, because they felt that if they're seen as a black business, they won't get funding, they won't get financing, they won't get support. So they've had to hide that. This is a bold statement. There's no way around this. It says what it's on the tin. This is a sort of black farmer. And, it's only a question of time before people come to terms with that is a sort of reality, and it's not there to be offensive. And it only works because there's no black farmers in the UK. If I called myself a black farmer in South Africa or the deep South of America, it wouldn't work because there's tons of them.
Yeah.
It only works because it's an anomaly. And that's the reason why I used it, because actually it begs the question, oh, shit, is he a farmer? The question is, are you a farmer? Do you have a farm? Where's the farm? We thought you were we thought you were from South America or something like that. So it's doing a bigger job than just selling product. It's starting that debate.
I think, yeah, it does, because I remember when I first saw the packaging for the first time in a supermarket, and I did walk past and take a double take, and then I think out of curiosity I picked up a packet, and then I was looking at it and I was thinking, you just want to know more. Your curiosity takes over, and I think it is a bold move. I don't think it works the same way in other ways. So if I brought out some sauce or sausages and said the Cypriot farmer, I don't think it would have the same effect.
It wouldn't. It wouldn't. And why do you think that is?
I think I don't want to be this guy, but I think it's color. I don't know. Initially.
Well, there's more edge to blackness than there's to be the Irish farmer or the Cypriot farmer. There's an edge to any. It's about how society views blackness.
Yeah,
and it's if you give you one of the great challenges I have when I'm discussing the Black Farmer brand with people is that the first thing they do is that they think it's an ethnic brand. And what I'm saying to people, this is not a bloody ethnic brand. It's not Levi Roots. Levi Roots is an ethnic brand, which you'll see down in the World Food aisle. The Black Farmer is a British brand. It's very, very British. You'll see that I'm carrying the flag. So it's a brand that really celebrates its Britishness, happens to be a black guy. And that's part of what throws people. So if it was down the ethnic aisle, everybody would be able to understand it. But a black Englishman is really not the stereotypical idea that people have of a black guy. So if I had dreadlocks, if I was smoking spliff, it fits in with a stereotype. But the Black Farmer goes totally against the stereotype. That's why it's a double take for people. It's like, actually, it's the sort of stuff you would actually assume only pure white. And the reality is that it is mainly white in there. And that's why it works.
And in some ways, the way that you try no, I don't know. That's not the right word. The way that you try and, in some ways, educate people about whether it's racism or just introducing them to, your blackness and the difference, you're doing it in ways that many others, let's say, may think is actually racist, but it's not. You're actually saying, no, this is okay. We can talk about this. I'm trying to introduce you to this. It is okay that I'm a black person who is a farmer. That you're trying to sort of break the mold in some ways.
Exactly. And so what happens is that, there's still certain parts of the country where they think it's more polite to call it coloured rather than black. Now, I would much rather be down in Devon than anywhere else because, you're looked after the neighbours you could trust and all that sort of stuff. And their language in terms of referring to people of colour may be slightly naive. I mean, I wouldn't call them racist at all. It's just sort of naive. And it's about how can you have an open conversation about these things without people getting nervous. And we got to a stage in this country where anything about color, there is such nervousness about it that, people avoid it. So I've appeared on TV programs, and they said to me, well, how do you want to be referred to? I says, the black farmer. And they go, oh shit, no, we can't do that. And I says, well, I had to name the company, and it really throws them into a real panic. It's a bit like, my God, we don't want to be accused of being racist. But so if my brand was, Mac Burton or something like that, they'd never have a problem. But it's called the Black Farmer. It's like, oh my God, no, you can't do that. So again, hopefully, what I'm doing is opening the door for people to be comfortable talking about it, and to see that actually to drag people away from the stereotypical idea of what a black person can and can't do.
I think in some ways, I feel like an invisible immigrant, and I'll tell you why, because I'm white, and a lot of the time, and I've had an Indian person say to me, oh yeah, but you're not like us because there's no color to some degree, but I just class myself as British anyway because I'm second generation. But I don't mind if people say to me, oh, where are you from? I actually have no issue with that. If someone says to me, if I say my name's Stelios and where are you from? I've got no issue with that. I don't see that as a racist question. I just see it as it's an opportunity to explain that my granddad came over in the 50s, and I just explain it. So it's not that, So I guess you're probably similar to that. If someone says to you, where are you from? You'd probably just say, well, actually, I came over when I was 4 and I'm a farmer.
Yeah, but you see, I think the difference is that all immigrants at certain period of time would have faced some form of racism. Yeah. So, the Italians would have experienced it. The Greek Cypriots would have experienced it. The Irish, they would have anything where it's difference. They would have experienced it at some stage. What would then happen over the decades is that they then blend in to the mainstream. Not only as blend into the mainstream, but actually being Mediterranean is seen to be exotic, exciting. It becomes part of the mainstream. Whereas black has taken a lot longer. So the people that I'm sort of feeling sorry for now is that, the Afghanis, all these people coming, they're going to be going through hell for sort of decades, the Muslim sort of communities. And that what we're now recognizing with Black Lives Matter is that black people have not had the opportunities because of the color of their skin, even today. And I know that the only reason why I am successful is because I have been really, really, really tough, and to have to fight just to be heard, to be seen. Otherwise, I would have just been pushed aside.
Yeah.
And I think that what we need to sort of recognize is that there is a long way we still need to go in this country, and part of demonstrating that we're getting there is not to be working in stereotypes. So something like the Black Farmer brand wouldn't exist because the Black Farmer wouldn't be exceptional because there'd be black farmers everywhere. That is my long-term hope.
So talking about BLM for a moment, again, another thing that most people would want to shy away from. Do you think businesses like, I know you lobbied the likes of Sainsbury's, Waitrose, all of the supermarkets to sort of get behind it, but should they, if they don't really believe in it, if they're not willing to actually make some long-term choices about it, rather than just changing their logo to a black thing, or because I think that I've always had an issue with them, just these big companies just pretending they're doing something, but are they actually doing something?
Yeah. So what happens is this, and it's something that I feel very, very strongly about. And you're saying, look, I deal with all the supermarkets. Now, if you go into the headquarters of any supermarket, it's a bit like going into a white enclave. When you see people of color, it's usually the security guard, the cleaner, or someone in the canteen. Now, the thing is this, and this is why a lot of brands are now getting their act together. A lot of their customers are black or from ethnic minorities. Now, it is unacceptable that your customers who are paying your salaries, that's contributing to your profits, are not representative throughout your organization. For decades, lots of companies have been able to get away with the reality that Britain is becoming more and more multicultural. that if they do not keep up to speed, they're going to have a problem. And so what Black Lives Matter did, it galvanized the black community. It galvanized people from diverse backgrounds to say, oi, actually, I'm not going to tolerate this anymore. So an example of that would be Uncle Ben's rice that was selling for years and years and years and years. That suddenly, with Black Lives Matter, people thought, actually, this is part of the old stereotype. This is no longer acceptable, and then they had to change. I think they're now calling it Ben's.
Oh, okay.
So what has started to happen is that people have realised that the black community need to be more representative throughout their organisation. So food is a really good area because everybody eats, everybody needs to buy the food, and the companies that are demonstrating that supported behind that, it's going to help them with their sort of profits. Now, in terms of other businesses, whether that's all businesses, where what they need to do is that they need to look around their offices, and if they do not have, a good representation of people from multicultural backgrounds, it shows that they're still in the sort of dark ages, and something needs to be done about it. Now, you don't bring about change by referring things to the human resources department. You bring about change by what you personally do. So when I do talks, I say to the chief executive, if once a year for 2 weeks you had a kid from a diverse background, I don't care whether he's black, white, whatever, a kid from an underprivileged background to come and work for you for 2 weeks for experience, that will do a number of things. A, that will make that kid feel absolutely brilliant. It will also send a message to that community, but more importantly, it will send a message throughout the business. If you expect to get on, this is the sort of stuff that you need to be doing on a personal level, that, every year you personally do this. That's how you bring about change, is when people do personal things rather than leave it to another department to sort out. So the question you've all got to ask yourself is, what do you personally do? And everything that I do as a person is I personally go out of my way to give people a break. And it's not about color, it's about giving people a break. It may be somebody, one of the guys I've just recently taken on, basically did 3 tours of duty in Afghanistan, had a terrible time. And a Scottish guy, he could hardly understand the word that it says, but he needed a break. And everything about my success in life is somebody went out of their way to give me a break. When you look at my story and you look at the things that I did without any qualifications, without any experience, the only way those things came about was somebody decided they're going to give this guy a break. And that's what I talk about often. The trick in life is to find your guardian angel. Find somebody that's going to put themselves out for you, give you a bit of protection to help you fly.
You strike me as someone who actually showed persistence, worked hard, turned up for all the shifts, did extra shifts. So that person who did give you a break, let's say, or gave you whatever, they saw that it was worth it. So it is meeting people halfway, isn't it? It's they've got to show you, or whoever it is they want to be their guardian angel, give me a chance, but I'm also working really hard for this. It can't
exactly.
Yeah.
You're so right. And we live in an age where people want things instantly, that people feel entitled. And I'm a great believer that I will give the opportunity, and that's all I would take responsibility, is giving the opportunity. It's for you to then make the opportunity work. Some people don't. Most people don't, because they want somebody else to do the work for them. No, the opportunity is what I give. The rest is down to you. The big challenge we have in our society is this thing of feeling that you're entitled, that somehow you're owed. And that's really going to cause major problems, I believe, in the future, because a lot of young people, talk about balance, talk about well-being. If this sort of bloody thing about well-being, it's overrated. Well-being is important if you're a PAYE, where actually work is a job. So you have your job, you have your social life, and you have a work-life balance. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're a freelancer, that's all bullshit. You do what it takes, So that's why you've got to do what you love. So it doesn't matter if it's going to conflict with something social, you're going to put that top because actually that is important to you.
Yeah.
So one of the things I look for when I'm employing people, I said, I'm not really interested in giving somebody a job. I'm interested in seeing what is it by coming to work with me that's going to help you fulfill what you want personally. That's how you got to think. I'm not interested in somebody who works from 9 to 5 so they could go and live this other life. And I believe that the people with that sort of the attitude, the ones that will always get on, those who are always looking for an employer to benefit their lives, it's the wrong attitude.
Yeah, I think there was one entrepreneur that I know, really good friends with him, and he said, I hate it when people come and say to me, work clever, not hard. He goes, they're just lazy people. He goes, you hear it all the time. It's all these modern tropes. He goes, but the fact is you can't build anything if you're not willing to put the effort in. You're not going to, and it's a very interesting point, and the people that are looking for balance, today's 18, 19-year-olds, without being rude. I remember when I was 18, 19, I was putting in some serious hours in the family business, and there wasn't no work-life balance. It was just work, and life was work. That was the balance,
But it is.
Yeah.
And I think that I believe that we're going into interesting times. That in the past, people thought they would go and work for a big organization, big corporate, and somehow they'd be settled for life. I believe the world is not going to be like that. Is that we are going to find a lot more smaller businesses because we now have the technology that I could send you produce from deepest Devon up to Scotland in 2 days. And therefore, the whole way that things are done are changing, and they're changing at speed, which is fantastic. Because what is fantastic about change is that it really kills off these giants who feel as though they've had the world to themselves. And there's some fantastic examples. I don't know if you know the stories like about Kodak, for example. Kodak was one of these big, powerful companies that dominated. And they were all about film.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody, in those days when taking pictures had to have films and get it processed. Now, if I remember the story correctly, in their own labs, they discovered a digital camera.
That's right.
And it was presented to whatever the board. And they said, well, why do we want to do this? Because we're making a shit load of money at the moment doing this. Why do we want to do that? So they shelved it. Then came the iPhone, and it destroyed their business. Now, one of the key things in life is, I think it's one of Steve Jobs' phrases, which is to stay hungry. Never feel that the world is going to stand still. Never think the world is there, to serve your purposes. It's about actually always being ready to move, always being ready to, see that things are changing. And that's why, I started off doing sauces. If I stayed there, I'd be bust. And then I went into sausages. If I just stayed there, I'd be bust. It's continuously being able to flex to where the opportunity is. Don't stand still. Stay hungry. And in a sense, it may seem strange, but I was actually programmed to be a successful entrepreneur because my disadvantaged background, my dyslexia, was about great tennis players. They spend hours practicing. Well, in a sense, being brought up in poverty, living with dyslexia, is a bit of a training ground that made me ideal for running business. That's why it becomes second nature. I don't have to read about it. I've lived with it all the time.
I think this is the interesting thing. Like when you look at people like Apple, or companies like Apple, shall I say, they're happy to cannibalize one of their own products to bring out a new product because they saw what happened to the likes of Kodak, where, hid the future and it caught up with them anyway. So, has that ever happened to you where, you had a product and you thought, well, we'll bring out another product and finish that one off just before someone else does?
Well, what I think about Apple at the moment is that they've gone from being an innovative company to actually, big conglomerate that is really just piling out the same sort of stuff, really. So I think eventually they're going to get caught out because they have gone down the money making route. And I think what they do now is that they invest in smaller companies where all the innovation is sort of happening. So they're no longer innovators. What they do is that they use their power to go out and buy companies that are innovating. In terms of the black farmer, I mean, where I'm at, I still own my business 100%. I have no investors at all.
Wow.
Now, the moment you have investors, it's a totally different story, because actually what these guys want is they want to get their money back as fast as possible, and they don't necessarily do what's in the interest in the brand long term. All great brands, even Amazon, for decades, made no profit. Ocado made no profit because they understood what you needed to do was that you needed to have longevity to build the brand credentials, to build up that relationship. If you have investors, that just kills that dream. And as far as I'm concerned, that is my sort of strategy. I'm still on this journey of building up what this brand means to people before it then goes to the next step, where actually it becomes big enough to start really cashing in on what the brand stands for. That's already starting to happen. An example is, we've just done an exclusive deal with Marks and Spencer's. Marks and Spencer's don't do brands, but in a couple of weeks' time, we've launched with them a jerk sauce. So the brand name is already powerful enough that other people want to sort of associate with it. Now, the other thing about business is you have to realize it takes about 18 to 20 years to suddenly be discovered. Most people think I've just been around for the last couple of years, because the reality, there's still more people out there that don't know about the brand than know about it. But it's about getting to the point when you get to that tipping point where suddenly, yes, everybody knows it, and then all the opportunities come about. This is sort of stuff that happened with Jamie Oliver. That you get to that sort of tipping point, and that is the most dangerous point to be, because then they plaster their names around everywhere, and then it starts to become a bit unbelievable for the customer. And that road is a really important road to try and manage without sort of killing off all of your brand credentials.
So do you see yourself doing other things, or is it just food products only?
Well, the strategy for the Black Farmer brand at the moment is that we want to get a place called the Black Farmer Experience. And it's a big farm shop, restaurant, conference center, wedding venue, somewhere on the M4, M5. And the whole point about the Black Farmer Experience is a place you come for inspiration. So at the conferences, companies will bring their staff there, and they'll do inspirational chats. I will do inspirational chats once a month. So you come there for inspiration. If you're getting married, you're there. You want an inspiring, different marriage. The farm shop, the restaurant, it's all about inspiring the sort of Britain that I would like us to be, which is multicultural, which is actually where urban and rural can actually sort of connect. So the idea that anybody driving down the M4, M5, we must stop off at the Black Farmer, because it's enhancing their lives. It stands for something. So that's the ultimate ambition. And then we will then have shops that will spring from that, and then other things, and then become international. So my big thing at the moment is to find the right venue to create that bricks and mortar experience, that actually this is somewhere we want to go to.
Fantastic. And obviously before this, I had a question in my mind, and I feel a bit braver asking this now, but early on, for example, when I was growing up, they always said to me, never mix politics and business. Just don't talk about it. Whereas you seem quite happy just delving into that and saying, well, for example, I read an article that said that you voted for Brexit, but you actually said it out loud. It's not the problem that you did. Everyone's allowed to vote however they want. But you actually just said it out loud, and you didn't worry about, I don't know, repercussions, let's say. So do you think that business people should be a bit braver in talking about their political beliefs?
Well, it's about everything that I stand for as a brand and as a person is maverick. It's audacious. It's putting it out there regardless of the consequences. And therefore, me as an individual and the brand wouldn't work if I can't be direct, regardless of the consequences. I'm at one with that. because I'm not looking for approval. My customers wouldn't really care less. And if they do have an issue about whether they shop with me because of the politics, well, they're not the right customer. What I want are people who are interested in people who are courageous enough to speak truth, to say what they believe. So that's why it works for me. Whereas most people in their lives spend their time hedging. It's a miserable life if you're hedging because you're not living your truth. I would much rather live my truth and upset people rather than hedge.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I can't bear hedging.
No, I can tell. and one last topic really is that tell us more about the Hatchery. You've got a business incubator essentially. Tell us a little bit about that and how that's come around.
So I get a lot of people who approach me with ideas for business ideas, tons of them. All right, from the Black community, white community, tons of ideas. And if I like the idea and I like the person, I say, right, what you could become part of the Hatchery. And how it works is this, is that most people, when they're starting a business, they can't pay themselves a salary. So they work for the black farmer doing something, whether that's sales, marketing. They work for the black farmer and also develop this idea of theirs at the same time. I will take a share in that business. So I tend to like businesses that are really new. So that means then it's sort of an equal, 50-50. And then develop it. So I will then pay for all the development, and then obviously being under the umbrella of the black farmer, you have access that you wouldn't get if you're just Joe Blogs on the road, off the road, and we develop it. And I've had some pretty remarkable successes so far. So Smorgasbord, one of the brands of the Hatchery, a guy in his 60s, been in corporate life all his life, came to me for a job. And I said, I ain't going to give you a job, but I'll create a brand with you. And then we created the Smorgasbord brand. And so that brand is now doing phenomenal. We're paying him more money than he ever got paid in his life. Another brand called the Gym Kitchen, a black guy came to me and he wanted to do beef jerky. And I said, no, that won't work. Let's do ready meals. That brand we've now done an exclusive deal with Asda with that. We've got another couple of other brands that we're just working on now. One is called the Sleep Tribe. Two most important things in people's life, food and sleep. There's not much out there about what can you do to make people's sleeping lives better. So that's that brand, all about sleep. Another one's called Trust Your Gut. People now recognize that your gut health is just as important as your mental health, and it's all products about aiding your sort of gut health. So another one called Freddy's Tequila. So a number of brands, slightly different, but always focused around a real person. Uh-huh. So that person is the driver behind it rather than just an idea. And I love it. I love creating brands and working at brands or startups. That's the thing I absolutely like.
Would you say it's easier to set up a company these days? Like, years ago, you'd need, especially if it's a national company, you'd need TV advertising, radio, print. Nowadays, you probably need those when you get to a certain size or if you want to go that way. But you can start up a business with social media these days, can't you?
Yeah, but it's not. Anybody can start up a business. And I think what most people do is that they think advertising is the way to do it. It's the biggest mistake. The most important form of marketing is below the line marketing. So it's above the line marketing and below the line marketing. Below the line marketing means it doesn't cost you a penny. That's word of mouth. That's social media. You just put it out there. Now, a lot of people don't like below the line because they don't understand it. The thing about below the line marketing is that there's no evidence that it's working.
Yeah.
It's a bit like falling in love. It's a bit like you don't know if you love somebody whether you're getting anything back. All you got to do is just put it out there and hope that actually it's going out there. It's feeling. It's really, really important. That's how you build brands. And then when you get to a certain stage, it's probably something like 5, 6, 7 years on, you then go to above the line where you start spending money. So actually, you're then complementing the below the line stuff, because especially when you're starting and people want a reason for buying, it's the below the line that will give them a reason for why they're buying into the sort of proposition.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about having the discipline that, we now have the ability to communicate below the line. So people talk about Instagram and influence and all that. That's part of it, but you keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. That's how you build a brand.
Well, on that note, Wilfred, I think we should leave it there. I think you've just nailed it, really.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
No, thank you for coming on. Massive thank you to Wilfred for joining me on the Ceres podcast. I really enjoyed it. He's very honest and open, and it's nice to see. It's refreshing. When someone's that honest and open. So, if you want to follow Wilfred or the Black Farmer, we've put all his links in the show notes. Be sure to send this to your friends. If you enjoyed it, chances are that they will too. Have a great one.